This morning's talk is on the third of the four reminders, or karma, and it goes, when death comes, I will be helpless. Because I create karma, I must abandon harmful deeds, always devote my time to virtuous actions, thinking this every day. I will examine myself. This is said as part of the preliminary foundation practices to the Kagyu Nundro practice, which is a pretty extensive practice. Hundreds of thousands of mantras and prostrations and so on. So first we start out with these reminders. The one on the preciousness of the human birth, the one on impermanence, and the third one is on karma. The last one we'll talk about at some point, which will be suffering, and the three kinds of suffering. So, but karma, interesting, a simple way that it is acknowledged in society and so on, and in our culture, is cause and effect, which is the obvious one. One has a bell, you ring the bell, and you have the effect of the sound. And this is the extent of not only spiritual materialism, but scientific materialism, which wants to have a say-so about everything. And it completely misses the subtle realms that the spiritual path begins to see and encounter. So karma is very, 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 very complicated and involved. Not only does this cause that, but this causes a multitude of different kinds of activities and so on, and actions. Coming and going, coming and going. It's very, very complicated, and this is why through the sitting practice of meditation, through shikantaza, we can settle ourselves down, bring the mind down to what's commonly called just a single point. So we can just see what is functioning, what is moving. We can understand karma ourselves. We can actually see this comes up and then goes away, and we can see that things seem to come out of nowhere without a cause. This is a misunderstanding, and it is a misunderstanding based on the presumptuousness of our awareness. Presuming that there is someone that's even seeing it, that there's a solid being who is seeing other solid things happening and occurring. So as I said, the subtle area is missed by wanting to know, the desire to want to lock it down, know what it is, what happens. Our whole legal system is based on a very primitive form of cause and effect. It doesn't take into consideration the incredible labyrinth or display of causes and conditions that arise around any given situation. Anytime you focus on any given situation, you are ignoring everything else, more than likely. So first contemplate the preciousness of being free and well favored. So we've talked about that a few talks ago, and then we talked about impermanence, nothing lasts. So now we're focusing on this part of the four reminders, which is karma. So that's it's kind of a difficult one to talk about, because it's so easy to say, well, karma is a Sanskrit word that means action, so that means there's an action and a reaction. And that is how it's set up. But as the way I've often pointed to it is to say, go look in the mirror. If you want to see how complicated this is, just your very presence as a human being, as a living being, is so amazingly complicated. Going back to your mom and your dad and their mother and their father and all the causes and everything that gets together that operates on cause and effect. And this is something that we when we look at our life, or we look at the frustration or the suffering that we have in our life, we want to stop it. We want to do something about it. We bring passion, aggression, and ignorance, the three poisons, into the picture, and we want to have our way with it. We want to slow it down. We want to find the volume. We want to find the speed control. We want to find we'll use a tarpaulin, if that'll help. Throw it over the thing. Let's stop it. Ignore it. Change it. Blame someone for it. Blame something for it. So it's because of this that happened. Very simple minded approach, and it will lead to more difficulty, more suffering. It will increase one's trajectory through the six realms of the God realm, the jealous God realm, the human realm, the animal realm, the hungry ghost realm, and the hell realm, which are states of mind that we experience. Karma, this causes that, so we kind of buy into that, and that we try to, as an apparent separate being or person, we think we can stop that. It is overwhelming, the seduction of the eight worldly dharmas that are saying you can do this, you can win. There are people, cheerleaders for it, that are just telling you, no, don't do that, do this, join this, don't join that, do this, do that. So that you'll have some feeling of getting somewhere. It's an illusion to get somewhere. I often say, in my simple way, don't do anything unless you have to. I am going to give a talk at the daily Dharma gathering called Simplicity. And at that point, I will brag about how simple I am. And my teacher, both of them, very simple, very complicated, very outrageous teachers, both of them. So it's very, very magnetic or seductive to want to go into this or go into that, or do this or don't do this, and try to constantly, and we're badgered by our own emotions, by our own hope and fear. We become afraid of something without even knowing why. And instead of taking our experience as meditators, as practitioners, as students of the Buddha's Dharma, of awakened truth, which is what Buddha Dharma means, instead of taking everything as a teaching, everything is preaching the Dharma, all the time. Even your worst back pain is preaching the Dharma. It's saying suffering, suffering, suffering. We think it's wrong, we want to get rid of it, rather than acknowledge that karma, or causes and conditions, albeit hidden or buried or around the corner or down the stairwell or up in the trees, the cause and effect that are happening when this appears to you, this is your karma. Your karma is ripening. I don't particularly like having diabetes and having a heart condition or being cranky. But that's the way it is. And when we say that's the way it is, still needs to be investigated. We need to look. As it says at the end of the slogan or the reminder. What does it say?
I must examine myself.
I must examine myself. We got to do that. We got to examine ourselves. So, what is being suggested, recommended, and promoted here is find out who you are. Sit down at the cushion. Sit down and find out who you are. And one of the things you begin to discover is who you're not. You're not a self. You're not a solid being. Very seductive. All the stuff that goes through our minds kind of reinforces there must be somebody looking at this. Must be somebody suffering. Our whole world, especially the whole political thing here, is extremely seductive to want to go in, and it's a total disrespect of cause and effect. It's a disrespect of karma to think that you are going to go in and somehow there's so much chatter going on, it's just nauseating. And when I say nauseating, I'm not saying I don't have sympathy for those who are suffering, who are trying to find a way to work with this. I'm just saying, hold still. No one's holding still. Everybody's jumping to conclusions and jumping to contortions and jumping to contraptions. Those are 3 C's. They're going into something, anything to make it feel like we're doing something, marching in a protest or carrying signs, or not that I don't have sympathy for all of that, because I do have a lot of sympathy for it. It magnetizes me. Go do that. Come on, go do this. Don't do it. When I say don't do it, don't shut down on it. This is why it's so difficult. Don't shut down on it. Actually see, understand yourself, so you don't have to ever ask anybody again, what is karma? You know what it is. And when you know what it is, you're probably going to be tongue-tied, because it's that difficult to talk about. When I asked this morning, I said, so maybe she said, what are you going to talk about? And I think Chiazan said, what's the name of it? Is there a title for the talk? So I'm talking about this because it was her suggestion. It's your fault. Sir?
Is karma personal?
Insofar as you think there's a person, then we personalize it. We actually create this, we create it, we don't create it. So that's why it's so difficult. We can't really find a culprit. We want one, because then that gives us the illusion of control. If I'm the one who's suffering, then I am the one who can get out of the suffering. It's very circular. This is why they have this description, this ancient description of the 6 realms. It's not saying there aren't all kinds of variables there, but some of it is very powerful and apparently long-lasting. More?
Is there such thing as good karma and bad karma?
Certainly looks like it. There seems to be something happening on the level of someone's being in a position to actually hear the teachings. Be someone in a position to have a mind. They're born with a mind that seems to be fairly open to what's going on. Maybe they have a lot of suffering or pain, but they're alert to what's happening around them. They don't necessarily take something immediately for granted. They're willing to have a sense of openness. So there's some, you could say, good karma, but it's always a relative statement. The ultimate statement is nothing happens. There isn't a separate thing anywhere. Time and space are an illusion. We can go on. I'm not the first person. I'm not making this stuff up. It's just using words, concepts to try to describe something that is very difficult. And this is why the encouragement is, as I do, and many all kinds of teachers before this old man have said, find out who you are. Sit down, practice, find out who you are. Whatever your practice is, you're very lucky to be here, not because I'm such a sweetheart, but because I can relate to you where you're at, whether you see it or not. And I do that. When I do that, I hopefully give you the kind of feedback that you really need to hear, not extra stuff that just turns you into one of thousands and thousands of students. There are people who have that kind of a situation, and that's apparently they're doing that because they need that, or that's what what karma, cause and effect, comes together in a certain way. My karma personally caused me, because of my search early on, to stumble into Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. A very lucky encounter for me, from the point of view of good karma. Yes.
You said both of your teachers were outrageous?
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
They both were willing to be genuine. They were both willing to be fools. They were not, I'm not saying they weren't aware of what people thought of them, but they certainly didn't function out of that making sure they didn't make any mistakes. They were both totally different kinds of teachers, but they were both outrageous. And I could give examples of that, but probably read them somewhere. Might be more interesting than my description. More? Shoka.
How does formally observing a vow change the relationship to karma?
So, like the vow to be with all things.
Like with a raksu or an apisa?
So it's just a way of gluing yourself, or just like doing the sutras, chanting the sutras. In themselves, the sutras are just a lot of words strung together in a certain way, and there's a lot of repetition. Just a way of reinforcing your relationship through the teachings, to what the Buddha taught. Everything is dependently arisen. What a profound understanding. Everything is dependently arisen. Whew. That means that everything you see anywhere is dependent on everything. It has no individual svabhava, or own being. It has no own being. Yet at the same time, it's self-existent. So, go figure. Receive the vow. Receive the vow. Observe the vow. And have, we're so lucky to even have such a thing. You could say lucky because of our relative, corner of the universe where we are, but who knows if that's would actually apply ultimately. Probably not. But as we're here, we have a relative situation. We have a corn to plant. A chicken to feed. We have things to do, so we're going to include that. We're going to include that in our life. We're going to observe a vow, or officially become a student of the Buddha's teaching. So it helps us, it gives us some kind of a touchstone or some kind of a reference point, so we can, okay, we're going to do that, and this will help us, encourage us to meditate. So we receive the vow to be with all things. I vow to do good. I vow to stop doing harm to myself and to others. You're actually observing a vow. Part of the observing is seeing how you can't always do that. A lot of it is just seeing how you can't be with all things. Something happens and you just don't like it. You hate it. You want to criticize it. You want out of here. But the vow brings awareness into that and brings tension into that, so you can see the way your self-centeredness is making demands on things. I don't want that. I hate that. I don't like that. I like this, but I don't like that. Just brings everything into a sharper focus, and it shows your sincerity about it. See if are you actually sincere about this? Is this just something you're just doing to present yourself as some kind of a spiritual guy? I'm a this. I'm a that. Here's my Dharma name is this. Look how wonderful this is.
Are all beings born inheriting previous karma?
You could say it that way. Even a mosquito has a past.
So there's no such thing as being born with a clean slate, karma-wise?
So, as far as I know, as far as you mean being born and no past, nothing is ever, you're somebody that came out of nowhere with no.
Canvas.
I don't think so. Yes.
From Sandru in New York.
Sandru.
He asks, so good karma might have brought me here to listen, but it's karma nonetheless?
it is combinations of things that seem to create some kind of, even karma is illusory. But we need something. We need some kind of reference point. We need a cushion to sit on. We need to listen to a Dharma talk. We need to ask questions of someone who presumes to even sit in front of other people. So we need some kind of movement happening there so that our awareness can go deeper into what we call our life, or the momentariness of this living situation we find ourselves in. So it would appear that way, that the relative situation, we're born into a relative situation, and it's so, as I said, so seductive to think that that's all there is. It just, we meet people all the time in the coffee shop or at our job, or they're very, if you ask them what do they think about death, they said, well, they think when you die, you die. That's the end of it. There isn't anything else. You just do the best you can, and kind of hedonistic approach to it. Stay away from the bad stuff, get the good stuff, and just take for granted your whole, form and your intelligence and your openness or lack thereof. We just buy into it.
Shane from California has 2 questions.
Certainly.
His first one, some Buddhist texts say good deeds bring good karma, bad deeds bring bad karma. Is this a simplification of karma?
Yeah, but it needs to be said so that there's a lot of simpletons out there.
How does that relate to the second part of the third reminder?
What is it?
When death comes, I will be helpless. Because I create karma, I must abandon harmful deeds.
It's just acknowledging the cause and effect situation. It's so gigantic, but it's just acknowledging that when death comes, when you die, you're at the end of your physical trail. So you'll be helpless from the point of view of how you feel. You probably will feel pretty helpless, even if you're enlightened or awakened or realized. There's probably going to be that kind of a thing, because there's still a physical form that's disintegrating. There's still the going away of all the 6 sense fields and the slow collapsing of that back into whatever it is.
Shane's second question. Get my phone to work. Other Buddhist texts say that karma is all that survives rebirth, not a soul. Do you have an opinion about that idea?
Not really. I bet you do, though. That's a good place to elaborate with. It's not necessary to have opinions about things. This is what an opinion looks like. That's what happens to the awareness. As soon as you fasten on anything, including the Buddha Dharma, don't do it. Not easy. And the way we do that is to see the way you keep locking down on stuff. That I like this and I don't like that. And the comment there is, I'm sure that the sincerity, the way it was promoted at one time was maybe it was even appropriate at that particular time. But quite often we take teachings and move them from a time when they were totally appropriate into a time when it doesn't work so well. It's like when they first invented the wheel, it probably was not round.
What is merit?
It is a concept that says that you actually can build up some kind of a good, like a merit badge. You can build that up so that when you die, that merit will bring you back to a time when the Buddha's Dharma is being taught. And so it's just a way of acknowledging relative truth and trying to get on stay away from the dark side of the moon. Try to stay in that. I think there's something to that, but it's when it only really fundamentally starts to work is when you observe the Bodhisattva vow, which is to be with all things, starting with your own thought patterns. No more warfare. So, but that's a way that a person can look. Some people actually need to think of it that way, as a plus and minus, in order to even get started. Have to think, like meditation is not a self-improvement project, but quite often it's thought of that when people first start. I want to meditate because I want to be more peaceful, and I want to be, when you start meditating, especially if you do these particular approaches here, depending on your karma, your life, the causes and conditions that come together that form the color of your skin, the way your earlobes are shaped, and your sex, and your ability to even hear the teachings. We all know someone who, if they came in this room and listened, and you paid them to come, I'm gonna pay you, come here, listen to what this person is saying, and ask questions. It just won't work. They're just not ready. They're too wound up in their own twining vines. They're going in their own track, and they don't even hear it. There, as it is said in the tradition, there are Buddhas in all the realms teaching the Dharma. There is a Buddha, traditional one, a Kashidagarbha is the Bodhisattva, who is in hell trying to help people. So whether that's an actual thing where you can go there and find out where he's hanging out at, we don't know. It's the idea of that, of being with all things. One's own positionality about everything starts to back off a little bit. You don't feel quite so demanding about your life and getting ahead, and you things that normally are seen as failure or difficulty. Even a backache is seen as just part of your path. It's just something you need to deal with. Nothing to be particularly embarrassed about. Yes?
Sometimes karma is kind of described as a sort of predestination.
Yeah.
And then people fall into using it as an excuse for
They do.
poor behavior or good luck.
Yeah.
Will practice keep us from falling into that trap?
I don't know. But it will help you, practice will help you get to know who you are and what your particular causes and conditions are, what your dynamic is. Just like the building we've recently acquired, what we're calling Karma House. It's going to be karma means action. Trungpa Rinpoche called his center in Boulder back in the 70s Karma Dzong, or Action Fortress. So it's interesting, a meditation center that was called Action Fortress. So not so much a fortress where you can have a lot of action, but a protective situation where people can sit down and really see what karma is. So really see what is this that is happening? What is this? Bring all of the human realm, which we're all in, or you couldn't listen to these teachings. If you're in the hell realm, you aren't going to be here. And you're not condemned to be there forever, but maybe 1,000,000 years. We don't know. Time is a very relative situation. Yes.
A question from Michael here in Battle Creek.
Yes, Michael.
He asks, are all actions not independence?
Are all actions, like this action here, he's asking if this is what-
Independent.
if it's not.
Not independent. Are
No,
all
no.
actions not independent?
Okay, so he's saying, is everything dependently arisen? Yup. Yeah, just to confirm that, I'll say it again, yes. Anything that moves is dependent on a lot of factors. Anything, including your thought patterns. This is why it's such an amazing thing we've stumbled into here, my friends. Sit down, hold still, and watch what your own mind does. If it's bringing you suffering in some kind, take the opportunity to just watch that. Because if you try to leave it by blaming, or if you try to leave it by looking just for some other situation that you as an alternative, then you miss your opportunity. This doesn't mean, I'm not going the other direction. Say this doesn't mean nobody should use medication. No one should take aspirin. No one should take some kind of a painkiller. I'm not saying that. I'm saying anytime something arises, use that as just an information about your particular life situation It has to do with the causes and conditions that are rising at any given moment, including your state of mind, your openness to listen. You're just that you're in this room here, or you're listening here, says a lot. You're actually going to take an hour out of your life and listen to what this person says. Why? What are you doing that for? Yes?
What is the purpose of dedicating merit?
This generosity is just an action of giving any merit that's being acquired because this is a bodhisattva path, a path of Mahayana path, where anything that's coming, if we can see it or not, we're giving everything away. We're just going to dedicate the merit to all beings, dedicate the merit to everyone else, rather than keep it for ourselves. So then there's the other thing of, do something, give something so that you can get merit. So it operates lots of different ways, and you should probably take a look at it, yes.
Question from Sheldon down at Takancha.
Or is he? You just told
It's
me.
right there.
Takancha.
He asked, what does karma have to do with operating out of hope and fear?
So it looks like it just increases that cause and effect. If you're hoping for something and you're running away from something, you're fearful, then that seems to be quite a labyrinth of hopefulness and fearfulness. Those are the two in our tradition are called hope and fear are called bandits, because they steal wisdom. They steal wisdom's clarity. By wisdom goes into hoping for something or fearing something. And it's about bringing awareness to that, not stopping that, or not having some kind of other level of transcendental control over, I no longer hope, I no longer fear, I'm in some kind of a transcendental God realm. We're not saying that either, because that's more separation, that's a more artificiality. Yes?
A question from Kozan, and then we should
Yes.
stop and get ready for the next.
Fine.
Her question is, how can living beings suffer past or create new personal karma if all things are dependently arisen?
Exactly because of that.
Sorry, would you read that question again? I didn't understand that.
Her
Read it.
question is, how can living beings suffer past or create new personal karma?
No, stop. Did you understand that?
How can living beings suffer past or create new personal karma?
Okay, now continue.
If all things are dependently arisen.
And what did I say?
Because all things are dependent.
It's because of it. It's because of it. There is not a self anywhere. It just looks like there is, and we function as if. This is why it seems to be so necessary to take it to the cushion, take it to your own practice. You need to have a personal awareness practice where you're just looking at a wall or looking at the floor or whatever. That's very, very simple, and then you watch what comes and what goes, and you interfere with it as little as possible, so that your clarity around what is moving is really, really powerful, so that you begin to see that there is no one observing this. But you have to see it. I can say there's no observant, observer, or one. We can all do it. I can say, as I do all the time, there's nothing observed, and there's no one observing. There's consciousness only. This was said in the 3rd century, 4th century, by Sangha Vasubandhu, the Samdhi Nirmachana Sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra. The teachings are everywhere saying this in different, sometimes very complicated ways. I'm not very scholarly, so I just say, whatever you're looking at, that's it, as it is. Yes?
You've said in the past, depending on your particularity of karma, What is there to begin with that would flourish particularity?
Wanting things to be different, as things arise, you arise, and there's some kind of karma or cause and effect that happens from beginningless time until now and is manifesting in our situation as Anna Maria. And all your stories about yourself, who you are, where you came from, your nationality, your background, how you're treated by your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters. I'm just elaborating. Your culture, what happened when you were 5, all of those things are making slight modifications, and they make more of them as long as when there's reaction to hope and fear, and we're trying to get away from this and go to that. We just create a further labyrinth of situations until you stumble into this teachings, and then the teaching person or the teachings, you might read it in a book, but it's better, I think, if you hear it from someone. They say, stop, hold still, sit down, find out who you are. They're not asking you to believe anything. They're probably not even asking you for money, unless they are. There's some people that charge a fee, have to have some peanut butter sandwich. But basically, the teaching person, he or she is not going to try to get you to do something for them or believe them necessarily. But there might be some kind of seduction going on if they feel like the only way you're going to be able to understand that if they draw you in. But it'll be very, very personal. Yes, go ahead.
When you see who you are,
Yeah.
do particularities dissolve?
Yeah, you see who everyone is at the same time. And there's no celebration, unless there is. Unless there is a celebration. It's always not to. It's not just not to because, I think I kind of like not to. I'm going to start not toing everything. Time to close.
One more question from Sandru.
Yes, Sandru.
Actually, it's a 2-part. Is there a progression in dedicating the merit? First, I decide I'm not going to add merit badges. Then, figure out there's no merit to dedicate. And finally, no one to keep the merit.
It tends to happen that way, and with different. But the important thing is to do it. The Tibetans were onto something, and they found these young 18-year-old kids that were going to have to do a lot of work up in the mountains and the snow ranges of Tibet. So they had hundreds of thousands of prostrations and supplications and so on. You may need that, you may not. What's next?
And now we'll dedicate the merit. In the back of the blue chant books.
Who are you going to give your merit to?
That too.
I did say 2, didn't I?
I'd also like to remind everybody about the donation boxes in the hallway, as well as the ability to donate online or through snail mail.
May the merit of this penetrate to all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho San Ji Hu Shi Song Bu Sa Mo Ko Sa Mo Ko Ja Ho Ro Mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.